retain something and remember it, we actually have to put emphasis and focus on it, and we have to use this review and repetition. So after you do those first few reviews, so you've done the review during your session, you've done the review at the end, and then you've done a review hopefully the next day. At that point, you want to stretch out the interval to a few days later. So anywhere from 3 to 7 days, you want to review that same material again. And there's different ways to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about some strategies for what to do within your reviews. But right now, just making sure you get in the habit of doing any kind of review that you can, and that you do it in these intervals will really, really help increase the likelihood that you will remember these things when you need to use them in the future. And the last thing I would do is, wait again after you wait a couple of days, maybe review again in about a week, and then another time in about a month from your initial learning session. And the reason for that is that's kind of the real test to see, okay, did we really store this in our memory? And every single time we attempt to do that recall, right? Every time we try to think of something, that actually, again, is something that's signaling to our brain. Not only is this important to hold on to because we keep saying it over and over again, but I keep being asked for this information, right? So it must be important for me to be able to communicate. So just that act of doing this constant recall, where you're saying, okay, what is it that I learned 3 weeks ago? What did I learn a month ago? And trying to recall that at that point, again, sends a very strong signal to the brain that we need to keep this information and be able to use it in the future. So the first strategy is to review and to review at those intervals that I just mentioned. Now, the second strategy is really, really simple, but it's not often easy. And that's to practice regularly. Okay. And regularly might mean different things for different people, depending on your schedule. But what I notice is that, if you're learning something again and you're doing the review, that's great. But you want to actually practice using what you know, ideally in conversation. Again, that will help us learn not only how to use the information in context, but also how to think on our feet. So being able to use information in conversation and practicing that on a regular basis is really, really important. And the reason why this is important is, again, for the same reason that review is important. If I know I'm going to be having a conversation maybe once a week, maybe twice a week in Spanish, then my brain, again, is going to pay attention to things during the week that are related to Spanish, to that conversation. I'm going to be retaining a lot more. And I'm also going to be prepared because I know I'm going to be reviewing some of the things that I've learned before, or I at least need to have those things at the ready on the top of my mind, right? So regular practice is really, really important. And I'll give you an example of why. So a friend of mine, and I think we were probably all riding together to a salsa festival, because that's pretty much what we do. we go to places where there's dancing. So pretty sure it's one of my friends that dances salsa. We were sitting in the back of a car, and I think there were about 4 or 5 of us. And there's one person there who was a native Spanish speaker, another person who had spent a lot of time learning Spanish and actually had studied abroad for, I think, an entire summer, if not a semester, or maybe a year, a little bit less than a year, but spent a significant amount of time immersed in Spanish, learning the language. And she was trying to have a conversation with the native Spanish speaker in Spanish. And it was, a really basic conversation. She was asking him a couple of questions. He was answering them. Again, it was pretty basic. But what happened during the conversation is that she kept pausing. And at one point she actually said out loud, "Oh my gosh, where did my Spanish go?" Because she's like, I know I learned this stuff. And she was really struggling to put words together because it had been so long since she used the Spanish that she knows. So even if you're a person where you're thinking, look, my Spanish is decent, I can get by, or, you don't have any really strong goals right now to learn more or to push yourself to the next level, and you're just trying to maintain, or you're just starting to learn, wherever stage you're in, having regular practice that's scheduled will make sure that whatever you have learned so far, that you won't lose it. Okay, so it's really, really important to maintain your language level, to have some regular practice built into your life and into your schedule. And just like with reviews as well, it's really great if you can set reminders for these things on your phone and actually have them scheduled in your calendar. That will definitely increase the likelihood that you will follow through, right? So try to make some time whether it's, once a month at the most infrequent, but maybe, ideally once a week if you can, if not every other week. But make some time in your calendar for regular practice. And this could be through a language exchange. It can be with a friend. It can be that you schedule lessons regularly so that you have them on your calendar. Like I said, even if it's just once a month, that will help you maintain the Spanish that you know. So if you feel like, I've been off right now, I don't really know what to do next, just the act of having that conversation will bring it back to the top of your mind. And again, all this is about getting our brain to pay attention. So our brain will go, oh my gosh, we're going to be talking to this person in Spanish. So we are going to need to gear up, right? Get that stuff queued up and ready. So again, having that on your calendar, making it a priority, scheduling it, and having that regular practice in conversation will really, really help you maintain the Spanish that you have already learned, even if you aren't learning something new. So regular practice is really important regardless of your level or your current goals. The third strategy to help you stop forgetting the things that you've learned is to come up with your own examples. Now, I always talk about learning in context, right? So when you're learning grammar or vocabulary, I always say it's much better to learn something in context, whether that context is a song or a book or a podcast or, a YouTube video, whatever it is that content that you're consuming. It's much better to learn words that way or grammar that way versus just saying, okay, I'm going to go get a grammar textbook or I'm going to go get a word list of 100 random words. I'm going to try to commit them to memory, right? Very, very difficult to do. Much easier when you're learning in context. But to add to that, to kind of boost that, I would also suggest that you come up with your own examples of any concept that you're learning. So whether it's vocabulary, write your own sentences with that vocabulary. So whatever words and phrases that you're learning, think of how you can use those in a real life situation. Don't just write down the context in which you're learning it, but also think about other contexts in which you can use it and begin to imagine those things and how you would use those words. Even if you come up with silly examples, right? Those words will be coming from your own voice and you will start to think in Spanish and generate the language for yourself. And that's really important because, again, if you're doing the creation process in terms of coming up with these sentences and examples, again, it's giving you that practice and your brain is going, aha, we're actually going to use this stuff. So not only are we seeing it over and over again, we're regularly practicing it, but now they want to use it. Okay, so we're going to have to hold on to it because I know it's going to be useful. So that's really the signal that you're sending to your brain when you say, okay, how can I use this phrase? Let me come up with 3 different sentences, 3 different ways that I can use this in a conversation that I would actually have in real life. Okay, so that's super important. The same thing goes for grammar, not just vocabulary. Just kind of going through a grammar chart is fine, but think about, okay, what if I wanted to explain to someone what I did on my summer vacation, right? So you're not just learning the past tense, you're learning, okay, here's a real context. Here are the verbs that I actually am going to need to use if I talk about, I went swimming. You'll have to know the verb nadar. If you went to the beach, you'll have to know the word for beach, which I'm sure a lot of you know is